another edition of the Contractor's Secret Weapon weekly podcast with your hosts, Dave Negri. This program is dedicated to helping contractors, remodelers, painters, roofers, roof cleaners, and business owners in the construction industry gain an unfair advantage over the competition. This program supplies you with information that the competition doesn't even know exists. This session brought to you by ContractorsSecretWeapon.com.
Before we get into the conversation with you, I just want to do a shout out to our sponsors who help promote Contractor's Secret Weapon and just some of the things that they have in store for you, our listeners. Hey, is your phone ringing enough? Do you want it to ring more with highly motivated and qualified buyers that contact you, the contractor, directly? No more waiting for the phone to ring. Just answer that phone. Best Home Services leads are dedicated to making your phone ring with motivated buyers that call you directly. There's no obligation to talk with them. Just go to ContractorsSecretWeapon.com/money. Fill out the form to secure your discount on the setup fee. Do it today. This special will not last forever. Check them out at ContractorsSecretWeapon.com/money.
Running a small business is no easy task, and I should know because I had a service company for almost 10 years. I am the founder of a software called Radius Bomb, and it's unbelievable. And for all the listeners of Contractor's Secret Weapon, we have a special offer for you to check out. If you want to send hyper-targeted, laser-focused, super personalized postcards to your exact prospects using a map while sitting in your underwear, then go to ContractorsSecretWeapon.com/Radius Bomb, and we'll give you your first 100 postcards for free. Just go to ContractorsSecretWeapon.com/Radius Bomb.
Hey, it's Dave Negri with Contractor's Secret Weapon. Thanks for being with us today. I'm excited to have a returning guest with us today. You may remember him if you've listened to Tighten the Lug Nuts, the Principles of Balanced Leadership with Rocky Romanella. Well, I got Rocky back because he's been in the business world for 40 years. He has some great wisdom, and we wanted to talk about goals. So I have Rocky today, and we're going to go through some pretty awesome stuff about setting goals and moving to the future and making plans. So here we go. Rocky, I really appreciate you taking the time, being with us, and sharing your expertise on goal setting with us today.
Well, I appreciate the offer back, Dave. It's always great to speak with you and your audience, and this is a great topic, and I think you're absolutely right from a timing perspective. Whether you are a large multinational company or whether you're a small mom and pop, one or two employees, at the end of the day, everyone's in the goal-setting mode right now for 2018.
Right. And so I know that a lot of times we don't want to think about, the future because we're so entrenched into what we're doing today, but we really do have to take that time and take a look at what are we going to do next year.
Well, I think that's the right approach. I also think, maybe we can take this from sort of two different levels. Sure. Let's take it from the kind of organizational perspective as it sits in a marketplace. I think as you're thinking about your goals and thinking about, where do we want to be as an organization in the next 18 months, 36 months, and maybe 5 years down the road. I know sometimes it's difficult for entrepreneurs and owners to think like that because they're so involved in the day-to-day and the tactical parts of the business. But I think it's important for you to kind of remove yourself for some period of time, a few days, kind of like do it off-site, go for that walk, park yourself someplace where you do your best thinking and start to think about where would I like to position the organization in the next 18 months, 36 months, 5-year kind of idea. And I know 5 years seems like it's so far down the line, especially on the small business side, but you have to force yourself to think that way, right? And I think that's important. And that begins the goal process from an organizational perspective. What are we going to look like? What's our customer base going to look like? What's happening in the marketplace that I should be aware of? Are things changing in the marketplace? Or, am I in an industry that's now moving towards an e-commerce platform that maybe I didn't think was going to be in that, in that e-commerce platform. So the example I would like to use just quickly, Dave, for you is two companies I always kind of used as examples. So on, well over 100-year anniversary, I think it was about 117-year anniversary, when Woolworths, the famous five and dime, was closing, when asked why they were closing the five and dime, the CEO said, "Well, nobody's interested in a five and dime anymore." And if you think about it, can you find another Dollar Tree store? Can they add another under five store? Can they add another, store that sells, $1 to $2, $3 things? And it wasn't
time now.
right.
They're popping up like crazy.
Crazy. So it wasn't that the five and dime or Woolworths, as it was known, F&W Woolworths, it wasn't that there was no longer a need for the five and dime. They lost their way. And if you think about, if you go back and take a quick look, and history is a good place to start to kind of get a view of where you want to go. If you think about it for a second, they had cafes and a Woolworths at the time. They were selling TVs in a Woolworths. They really weren't the five and dime anymore, and so they kind of lost their way. Second quick example, on just over 100-year anniversary, when asked why was he discontinuing the catalog, Sears and Roebuck said, "Well, no one buys catalogs anymore." Now, when you go to the mailbox, can you get another catalog? I mean, everything in your mail is catalog.
Yeah.
And I guess the question I would ask is, isn't Amazon really the Sears catalog online?
Yeah.
I mean, you can buy anything you want. I mean, remember the old Sears catalog? You can buy a Craftsman lawn tractor. You could buy the shed to put the tractor in. Remember, they had houses for a while.
Yeah. Matter of fact, it's kind of funny because my daughter has one.
Right, is that amazing? Think about that.
It's a 100-year-old house. She lives in Dunedin, Florida, and we were looking at it. We were looking at this is an old Sears house that came, in a box, and they put it together and put it up, and bingo.
So that's really, if you think about it, if you're going to buy something and the first place you go is probably to Amazon, or you Google it and what comes up at Amazon does sell it. So I guess if you think about it, so those two quick examples really pertain to all businesses at all sizes are to make sure that you're not missing a trend or missing an opportunity to position yourself or your company at no matter what size it is to what's going on in the marketplace, what are the changes. And maybe being the earliest adopter may not be the best case scenario, but certainly if you don't adopt early or don't recognize, it's probably a better way. If you don't recognize the changes early enough and you miss that spot, then all of a sudden, it may cost you more, or you may never get to catch up. We may never get to that spot. So I would say that, at a very high level as an organization, part of what you should do as you're going into this goal setting period is to take that strategic moment of saying, okay, what changes are happening in the marketplace? Am I positioning the organization to where we need to go? As Wayne Gretzky once said, when they did an analysis of Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, they realized he wasn't the fastest skater, didn't have the hardest shot, wasn't the toughest guy in the corner, wasn't the fastest skater, as I said. And they said to him, "But you're the greatest player of all time." And he simply said, "I go to where the puck's going, not to where the puck has been."
Right.
So if you think about it from that perspective, that's what you're trying to create in your business plan and your goal setting as an organization.
To go to where the business is going.
Yeah, not to where the business has been. And so I think that's important. So that's kind of from an organization perspective. Now, once you begin to establish those goals, I think there's three key things that, that you have to keep in mind and make sure that they're a part of the plan. The first is your goals have to be have alignment so that they're aligned to the business, they're aligned to where you're trying to take the business. And then you have to start to think about, well, how do they align with the people that we have inside the organization? So, for example, if you're going to move your business in a certain direction, and maybe for the sake of this example, is you're going to go to an e-commerce strategy that you may not have had before, well, then you have to keep in mind there's going to be people in your organization that have to execute that strategy. And so there has to be organizational alignment so that, it's important to you and it's important to your people. They understand what role they play and how they're going to execute on behalf of the organization. So alignment's so important so that everyone's on the same page. And the same is true with the goals. Once you put out targets, once you put out, this is where we're trying to take the organization. It may be a sales growth target. It may be a profitability target, or it may be, we're going into a new geography, and today we have 3% of the market. We want to go to 5%. All of these different targets that you show as guideposts are important, have to be aligned with everyone in the organization. So what's in your head has to go into their hearts and they have to understand it so that they can execute on behalf of the organization. So alignment is the first kind of procedural step I think is so important. Second is accountability, right? So does everyone know the goals, and are they prepared to do the work? And so if the answer is yes, that begins the first step of accountability. I know that Dave understands what we're trying to accomplish. I know he's capable of doing it. Dave and I have had that conversation. He's nodded yes. I know where we're going. I want to participate. I'm part of this. Put me in coach kind of idea. Mm-hmm. Well, now I can hold him accountable. And there's positive accountability. And that's the coaching side, or that's the recognition side of great job, Dave. Thanks for all you do on behalf of our organization. We hit those targets. That's the positive side of the coaching. And of course, the negative side, or the more difficult side, is when, hey, Dave, we're a little off plan. What help do you need from me? How do I get you there? But that accountability piece happens by being aligned first, and then being able to communicate those goals and getting that kind of nod from your people that they understand what role they play. And then the second is, how are you going to measure it, right? I want to know what good looks like, and I want to know, how are you measuring me? So, for example, when I walk up to the plate and my batting average is on the Jumbotron, I know that 280 is a pretty good batting average potentially. But if everyone on the team is batting 310, all of a sudden my 280 doesn't look so good. Right? So, so each year you're improving the goals, right? Or you're maybe improving is not necessarily the right word, but you're moving the goalpost sort of. Like, okay, last year we were at 3% growth. Maybe this year we think the market can bear, we have more talent, we have more opportunity, so we think we can get to a 4%. Well, it's no different than a team that had a 220 batting average. And now, players have improved, they've gotten better, they have more confidence. Well, now you may have gone from 220 to 240, but the rest of the team is at 280. While I acknowledge your improvement, you're still behind everybody else. So that's where this accountability and organizational alignment becomes so important, because I have to move you with the organization. I don't want you to fall too far behind the rest of the group. I want you to feel like you're part of it and that you're contributing. But the reality is that your peers and the performance of your peers is going to hold you more accountable than probably I will even.
Right. Yeah, I know a guy that has crews, and they, because of their bonus schedule based upon their production, they hold each other very accountable.
Well, in a small company, there's no secrets. There's no secrets in a large company, but in a small company, it becomes more obvious, and everybody kind of knows what everybody else is doing. And so we kind of challenge each other in a positive way to perform better, to do better, and we can celebrate those successes, which is really a nice thing. But that's so important on that accountability piece. And then, I think finally, always use objective criteria for your recognition or promotion or your bonus plans. Make sure it's stuff that everybody clearly understands. It's not subjective. It's not, hey, you've been here a long time. I really think you do a good job, and your heart's in the right place. Okay, we establish your heart's in the middle of your chest. That's a good thing. But then after that, you have to have credible, reliable, and also objective criteria for that recognition. So, to your point on the bonus plan, that bonus plan, you get what you incent. So you want to make sure you incent the right behavior, right, that it's equal, it's fair, it's what people can understand, and it's not incenting, quote unquote, the wrong behavior. I mean, look today no further than all the news that you read about with Wells Fargo and, all the situations they had with all these accounts that were starting. Well, you start to incent this concept of we want to drive as many accounts as we can. I think the target, when you look at some and you read some of the press or you watch some of the YouTube videos from some of, the congressional hearings, it got down to that, from the top down, they were driving this 8. We want, I want each of our customers to have 8 accounts. Well, if the first question is, in fact, the CEO once was quoted as saying 8 rhymes with great. Okay, well, the first question is, do you even have 8 products? Yeah. And so, but if you start to drive that incentive, if you get what you incent and you drive that behavior through incentives, so you want to make sure that your bonus plans and your incentive plans drive the right behavior, that there's a double check to make sure that people are gaining, those results in a good, fair, positive fashion. And that, we do everything with outstanding integrity. But having said that, I think it's important that everybody understands the criteria, for the bonus and what they're trying to accomplish. And then the last piece is, is this concept of employee development, or how are you going to develop your employees, right? How do I have in my organization the best, the brightest, the most informed, the best educated people that I can have in my organization? And it should be my responsibility as the leader, as the owner, to give people that opportunity to want to be the best, the brightest, most informed, the best educated, but they should want that as well, right? So the two of us working together on that concept starts to develop just the best employees possible. They feel good about themselves. They feel like they're part of the solution, not part of the problem. And one of the most important things happen is their authority equals their responsibility. So I'm going to give you this responsibility to take care of the business, to, think about a small business perspective. You're going to have the cash register. That's a lot of responsibility, but you have to have some authority to make decisions. But you can't feel like, okay, I got all this responsibility, but I have no authority to make any decisions. So now clearly they're not the owner. So there's a point where those decisions, have to be. There's a procedure that you follow, but there's simple decisions that happen every day out there. For example, if somebody comes back and it's clearly a defect, and a refund has to be given. I mean, do you really want that customer to go through this ridiculous process to get a refund when common sense says they deserve a refund? Right. So at that point, that person that you have that represents your brand as your employee feels like they have no power. The customer looks at them like, what am I even talking to you for? Get me the manager then. If you can't make the decision, you've just taken away all their authority. So there are some things that they surely should have the authority that goes with that responsibility. So I think those are three key things when you're starting to think about, you establish your goals, and then they should be organizationally aligned. There's an accountability piece that everybody clearly understands what we're trying to accomplish and what they're going to be held accountable for. And then there's an employee development piece so that they can execute on behalf of the goals of the organization.
Well, yeah, because your employees, when you boil it down to everything, they are the conduit that keeps your customers happy.
I think that's so true and well said. And they're also your brand.
Yeah.
So they're really the brand, and they carry your brand promise, right? So a customer identifies with you, and there's a brand identity that goes with it. You think about, somebody says to you, "Hey, Dave, do you have a electrician that you would recommend?" There's somebody you would recommend, and it's because of their brand and who they are and what they stand for, and so they become their brand. It becomes very interchangeable, and so that employee that comes to the home and does the work inside the house from an electrical perspective is the brand of that company, and so that's your brand ambassador. So think about your employees; they're really your brand ambassadors.
Okay, so that reminds me of like the two contractors I know, but the one I was talking to in Rhode Island last week. And he was so emphatic about his employees. He said, "I know they're the most important asset I got. I strive to make them, to pay them, and of course train them and all that other stuff. But I want them to know how important they are to my business." He says, because in the last 5 years we grew from $1.5 million to $15.5 million. That's how important I know they are. And I said, my office manager. She has a car to drive back and forth to work in. I want her to feel important, and I want them to know that they're going to get paid well, and I want them to really think about never leaving me, because I know that they'll never get paid this well from somebody else. And I think that's a great way to look at your employees and the whole, from an umbrella standpoint, on how they are your business.
Well, I agree, and I think that there's a classic example of an individual who understands that their employees or their people are really part of the solution. They're not part of the problem, and that I still believe that your employees are your greatest asset.
Right.
And so you and I had talked, I think, on our first conversation, but many of you know throughout my career, I mean, I spent 36 years at UPS and moved around the country quite a bit and got a chance to learn from some really wonderful people. But when I was in Iowa, so here's a Jersey guy from Iowa, picture that, the Rocky Romanella. So people in Iowa got a kick out of my name. And it was funny because the first thing they'd always ask me is, "Are you in a witness protection program? Like, how'd you get to Iowa?" And I would say to them, if I was in a witness protection program, my name would be Joe Smith. It wouldn't be Rocky Romanella.
Right.
But I was out on a visit one day, and many of our drivers, had farms, and they would, they were great to where they would work it out among each other and then who took off that week so they could plow their farm. But what they used to always tell me is the key is you plow the fields once. You don't do it 2 or 3 times because you didn't do it right the first time. And so I learned from that there's great value in doing things right the first time. Uh-huh. And so what this individual in Rhode Island learned, and he may not articulate it this way or he may not quantify it this way, is he realized that the cost of turnover and the cost of always having people come in and go out, the cost is much higher than paying your people the right appropriate wages, taking care of them the right way, and having longevity, and having them understand that they want to be part of this company that's growing from 1 million to 15 million, and someday could be a much larger organization because they're seeing the vision in the way he acts. That's so important, and you're plowing the field one time the right way, right? You bring that employee on, you teach them all the skills and train them in the safety and the appropriate things they need to execute the job, and they're just going to continue to get better. But if I'm there 6 months and I'm unhappy because I don't believe I'm getting paid appropriately, or the work conditions aren't great, or I don't believe you're a company that cares about safety, and I leave, well, now I got the revolving door, and the expense of that is so much more, Dave, than paying people the right appropriate wage the first time.
Right. I saw a post of one of the guys in one of the groups that I'm in, and he goes, I hear all of you guys, a lot of you guys complaining about your turnover rate with your employees. He said, I'm going to be blunt. He said, it's not your employees, it's you.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah. So it's a lot to think about.
Yep.
On that. But with the goals, I think that, like you said, it's just getting ready, being prepared to kick off the next year in a positive direction so that you're not trying to play catch up. I know so many times that we say, well, I don't have time to do this.
Well, that's true. And I think the other thing that's so important about goals, so, once you get the vision of the organization and get an understanding of where you're trying to go and what you're trying to accomplish, and then you make sure that the goals are aligned, there's accountability associated with it, and your people, have the ability and the skill they need to execute. Then I think the next important step is, and we talk a lot about it in my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, is this concept of balanced leadership. Well, when it comes to goals, balance for me is that the constituents are represented. So, for example, I would say that I would always have between 6 and 10, no more than 10. Probably the number's closer to 8. Goals, sub goals that support the overall where the organization is going. But I always saw balance, and what I mean by balance is in those 8 goals, for example, there would be representation of customers. So maybe it's revenue per piece, maybe it's churn, which is customer turnover. So there would always be 1 or 2 elements that would represent the customer. Then there's 1 or 2 or 3 elements that represent your people. Is it safety, injuries and accidents? Right. Is it turnover? Is it payday? One of the things are my people working a 10-hour day every day, and that's going to get old after a while, and that's not a very good work-life balance situation. People who are willing to pitch in and work longer hours at maybe a specific time of the year or a specific project, but if every day of the year is peak season, or every day of the year is a special project, it gets old after a while. You're missing Little League games, you're missing Girl Scouts, you're missing, dance, you're missing all those important times in your children's lives. That gets old after a while. So there's always 2 or 3 elements that represent people, and of course there's 2 or 3 elements that represent your shareholders or stakeholders. It's usually a profitability number, or something that talks about because you still need to be a profitable company to exist and move on and grow and develop. And then I always try to add 1 or 2 process. So maybe it's 2 customer, 2 people, 2 share owner stakeholders, and 2 process things. And process things, could be a production element. For example, we like our technicians to do 2 installs a day. Okay, well that makes sense because you have to plan out how many people you need based on the number of, work orders that come in. So there's a couple, but that to me is balance. It can't always just be, all right, we're going to grow revenue in 2018, and that's our number 1 goal. Well, that gets old after a while, number one. Number two is it may not be achievable if all you're doing is focusing on revenue. Well, you could grow so fast that you don't have the people to handle the revenue. So you have to be in balance, and it's about your customers, your people, your stakeholders, your share owners, your profitability, and then this process thing that says if we follow this process, we can replicate what good looks like. So, once you establish the goals, then you establish, that there's alignment and there's accountability. And as we said, there, people understand, what they need to do and what development they have to have. Then there's this balance, it's kind of dashboard of balance. And, in the book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, I mean, it's really more of a how-to book. Someone sent me a wonderful email last week and said, Rock, you talk about it being a leadership book. While it's true, it really is a how-to book because at the end of each chapter, there's like 2 or 3 bullet points, a kind of summary and kind of lessons. But there's one lesson there's one chapter he talked a lot about, and that's this the Big 8. I had 8 elements that we tracked as a kind of as a dashboard of how are we doing, because so many times in business, the things that you look at are lagging indicators. You don't know you're off plan for a quarter maybe, or until all your receivables come in and those kind of things. And so I always wanted to have a dashboard that let me know, am I going in the right direction? Kind of like when you're driving your car, right? Okay, am I out of gas? How are things going? So you had that dashboard. So the Big 8 in the book is this dashboard that I used in business that would at least let me know that I'm driving the car in the right direction. Things are going well. And it's an if, then, go to. Well, if I'm hitting these elements as leading indicators, it's reasonable that when my profitability comes out on a quarterly basis or those lagging indicators come out, I shouldn't be surprised because, I shouldn't be surprised when I run out of gas if I'm watching the needle go down and now I'm close to the letter E instead of the letter F. I can't be surprised when I run out of gas. Well, It's the same. It's the same in business. So it's an interesting concept, and I never really thought of it that way. But the book really does have that, kind of how-to in it. So, you can take a look at the Big 8 that are in here. And then there's another chapter in here, I think, as you're building goals would be, to me, I always had these 100-day plans. Like whenever I took on a new responsibility, I would put together my 100-day plan. What is it that I want to try to accomplish in the first 100 days? And so for me, that was when I started a new assignment. I started to do that also when I was going into the planning part for the year. I would say, okay, look, what are we going to do in the first 100 days of the following year, because that's the make or break, sort of like the leadoff hitter on a baseball team or the first quarter. If you get too far behind, it's almost hard for you to come back. You almost have to be perfect in everything you do. So I think that, if people want to take a look at the 100-day plan in the book, it's a nice way for you to kind of take a look at what should my first 100 days look like. So, for example, if you're putting together your plan for 2018, what's in that first 100 days of 2018 am I going to do? Because you just don't turn a light switch on January 1st and everything starts to happen. There's a preparation piece. So as you start to look at your 18 plan, you got to start thinking, well, is there, as you said, is there an expertise that I need to give my people? And maybe I'm going to do some training towards the end of this year so they're prepared to hit the ground running in 2018. As I end 17. So the end of 17 is as important. You want to finish on a high note. You want to make sure that you're positioning all your assets properly and that you're ready to really hit the ground running when 18 starts.
That's awesome information. It's great. And all that stuff, a lot of that stuff's in your book. I know the 100 days, it's like breaking your year down to like bite-sized pieces.
Yes. I think that's a great way of putting it. And you can do the 100-day plan for you personally as the leader of the organization or as someone taking on a responsibility.
Sure.
But from an organizational perspective, I always liked it because it gave me a chance to, as you said, take down a bite-sized piece. And you'll see in the 100-day plan, for me, it's all about balance as well. I make sure that in that first 100 days, I'm taking, there's customer piece, there's a people piece, there's a profitability piece, there's a process piece, because what happens is that if you're not careful in life, your strength becomes your weakness. So if you're a very focused individual, your head's down chopping wood, well, you lose sight of all the things. You have blinders. You lose sight of the other things. And so now your strength of being a focused, dedicated, person that's really committed is a good thing. But now it just became your weakness because your head's down and you're losing sight of other things. And so the 100-day plan also allows me and my Big 8 kind of dashboard says, wait a second, I got to make sure that everyone's represented. It's not just growing the business, but and my people have the skill to execute new business that I brought in. Is it business that we're bringing in at a profit? Is it good profitable business? Is it sustainable? Is this growth sustainable? And what's the process that ensures that the quality of what what I'm doing is out there and it's replicated, and every customer gets to see what good looks like in our organization.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All the content that you've been giving us today. Everyone needs to go back and take notes, everybody.
Read the book. It's in the book. It's in the book.
Yeah, read the book. We'll put the link to the book in the show notes. Rocky, this has really been awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Well, we have a website, www.60managementservices.com, and certainly you can, I do a lot of correspondence back and forth through that, and then but you can purchase a book online as well through that. But feel free, if you have a question or something comes up and you want to ask a question, you can send us a message through the email there. Certainly, if they reach you, Dave, you can shoot me over any questions that they may send you. I would love to respond to. And then the book is you can purchase on Amazon. They do a great job of fulfilling quickly. The book's been really selling well. I feel very fortunate that the book's been doing really well, and so it's either Amazon or Barnes & Noble online. And we're at Facebook now. I tell you what, I'm not real good at the social media, but I'm trying. I got to find good people. I got an excellent social media coordinator, and she's done an excellent job. So now we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter. I don't really understand the Twitter so much. I feel like you get washed into all the other stuff.
I know. I haven't. Somebody else does it. That's good enough for me.
Yeah, I don't really understand that. But we are on Pinterest now, which is pretty cool, and which is neat. And we did the book in many ways is a dedication to my dad and my wife, who just been such wonderful influences on my life. And so sales were unbelievable for Mother's Day and Father's Day, as people read the book and would email me that, hey, I read the book and thought of my dad, or thought about how, what a great influence my wife or husband's been in my life. So I think that was pretty neat. I mean, it was a great byproduct of writing the book.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah,
it was pretty cool. It was like, it really was nice. It was probably one of those nice unintended consequences. So that was really cool. So the book's been going great, and I appreciate you asking and letting people know about it. And if I can help in any way, you or any of your audience, I would love the opportunity.
Cool. So we've had Rocky Romanella with Tighten the Lug Nuts, and it's really been a pleasure. I really enjoy talking with you. It's just great interaction.
Well, thanks, Dave. And if there's a topic that your audience specifically we want to talk about, we could do that as well.
All right. Awesome. Excellent. We'll do that. Again, I want to thank you for joining us and investing your time with us today. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and if you did, go to iTunes and give us a shout-out. You can also go to our website, www.contractorsecretweapon.com, and check out today's episode and leave us a comment in the bottom of the page. And if you haven't gotten your 15 secret weapon strategies to getting higher-end customers, get it while you're at the website. Also, I want to thank again our sponsors for keeping this podcast alive for your profit-making pleasure. And so go be profitable this week. Work smarter, not harder, and learn how to leverage your time and your knowledge so that you can be more profitable. Again, see you next week.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Contractor's Secret Weapon podcast with Dave Negri. We would love to hear your comments about this episode, so visit us online at www.contractorsecretweapon.com and let us hear your thoughts. If you were listening via iTunes, please leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive, the more other contractors will benefit from this show. Thank you, and see you next time here on the Contractor's Secret Weapon Podcast.